Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EUPATI Open webinar about the launch of medical devices module. My name is Zhanna Popova, and I'm the EUPATI Patient Engagement Training Coordinator. Today, I'm very happy to moderate this webinar and to present an overview of the newly developed EUPATI medical devices module. Patient involvement in the development of medical devices has become an important aspect of the patient engagement field. The medical devices industry is growing rapidly and is expected to embrace patient engagement and to increase capacity for meaningful collaboration with patients. Understanding the latest developments in the medical devices field allows patients to take informed decisions about their healthcare and quality of life. While this is still challenging, there is an emerging consensus that patients should be involved in the development of medical devices and supported to present their particular perspective in that field. EUPATI provides training about medicine's research and development to patients and patient representatives. Recently, we have expanded our content to medical devices as a response of this growing need. EUPATI, supported by EIT Health-funded project with partners Bayer, University of Oxford, Medtronic, and University of Copenhagen, established multi-stakeholder approach for the development of a training module on medical devices. This training module covers all different perspectives. It consists of 4 courses and it is now fully available in the EUPATI Open Classroom platform. EUPATI Medical Devices module presents the regulatory framework of medical devices, the development of the medical devices lifecycle management, the general principles for market access, and patient involvement and the connection with the health technology assessment. The main purpose of this training module is to address the increasing consideration for patient engagement by regulatory and HTA agency and to promote the roadmap for meaningful patient involvement in the Medtech sector. The main purpose of this webinar today is to present the multi-stakeholder approach and an overview of the working process in the creation of the EUPATI Medical Devices module. We want to share about best practices of patient involvement in the Medtech sector and to introduce the roadmap for patient involvement in medical devices. But before we start, let me briefly introduce you a few housekeeping rules. In order to have the most enjoyable experience for everyone, please pay attention to these rules. The first thing is that all microphones will be in mute. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded in the EUPATI YouTube channel. Also, please use the Q&A box for questions to speakers and the chat box only for comments. Please ask your questions to the panelists in the Q&A box. You can also raise your hand from the button below during the Q&A session, and we are going to unmute you and give you the floor to ask your questions. We may not have time to answer all your questions, but we will make sure that we monitor the chat and we are going to integrate your questions in the general outcomes. Also, you can upload the question if you have the same in mind. There is no need for repetition, and you have unlimited options to upload questions. And finally, we would like to encourage you to ask your questions and to share your feedback, and let's make this webinar as interactive and engaging as possible. Now it is our great pleasure to introduce you the wonderful speakers for today. These are Lotte Klim, EUPATI Fellow and Patient Expert, Dr. Biom, Chief Scientist at Medtronic, Dr. Paolo Rey, Senior Manager in the National Institute for Health and Care Research, Applied Research Collaboration, Oxford and Thames Valley, Dominic Hamelink, EUPATI Fellow and Patient Expert, and Eu Hca, EUPATI Open Classroom Coordinator. Welcome to all our speakers. It is really great pleasure to welcome you today. And this is the agenda of the webinar and the order which the speakers are going to appear. Now, without wasting more time, it is our great pleasure to introduce you the first speaker, Lotte Klim. She has contributed in creating EUPATI's medical device module as a patient representative and EUPATI Fellow focusing on health technology assessment. Lotte also took part in revising the new EUPATI learning platform and created new content on qualitative research, patient-reported outcomes, and health technology assessment. She lives with type 1 diabetes and has more than 20 years of experience as a patient representative. Currently, Lotte is a clinical trial recruiter at Novo Nordisk and leads the patient engagement activities. Before that, she was the patient engagement officer at the CRO for decentralized clinical trials and led the strategy and operations for patient collaboration in trial planning and development. Lotte has also worked with developing PROs and conducted intro and exit interviews. In 2015, she initiated the Danish EUPATI national platform, which she chaired until 2018. From 2017 to 2021, Lotte served as a member of the Pharmacovigilance Council at the Danish Medicine Agency and as a special advisor to the European Medicine Agency. Lotte, welcome. Please turn on your camera and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for inviting me to present at this webinar on or co-present what we did in the development of the medical devices module. Please, Janet, lead us to the next slide. I want just to touch upon the value of patients in content development that we did for the medical devices modules. I've been involved with also some of the prior work with EUPATI, and I think that the one big difference of how we developed this content was that we gathered a group of fellows and discussed what would we actually want to see in the content, what is the most important information that we would not like to present to our fellows and other patients across organizations, what is the most important information to them about medical devices and the full context of medical devices that we can build our advocacy and involvement activities on. So what we did was that we sat down and defined the topics that we would like to see in the content, so that we were sure that this was really seen from a patient perspective, because there's no doubt that there's a lot of information around medical devices. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of development information also around us, but we would like to gather this and focus on what was important for patient representatives to know about. So that was really the starting point. And then we had the opportunity to work with a group of really engaged stakeholders around us, and they will also be presenting today because they could contribute with a lot of information and knowledge that we didn't have as patients. But I think that actually we did achieve our goals of fulfilling this whole circle. And then we were also led by the EUPATI editorial board to ensure that the content was well aligned with the rest of the content. There are a lot of similarities with what we already see in the other modules, but they are primarily based on pharmaceutical and the regulation around pharmaceuticals. And with the new regulation on medical devices and in vitro diagnostics, we also need to know the differences in where can we as patients contribute in the best way, and what are the differences and what are the similarities. So that is also some of the things that we touched upon. And please, Janet, to the next slide. Next slide. So as I just presented, we have the topics that were specifically around medical devices and also the context. There's a lot of context information that is more maybe like nice to know, but also a lot of needs to know as a patient representative. And that is the history of medical devices that is very useful to build on, and also the new context of it, or the context of the regulatory system and how this is different from pharmaceuticals. And especially I want to highlight the development processes where especially where interaction with patients can be very useful. And then we wanted also to highlight how can patient and representatives actually apply this knowledge. There's a lot of information to get. There's a lot of information on the regulatory system, on the history, and so on how do medical devices get on the market, and so on. But how do you actually use this knowledge? How do you apply this as a patient representative? And that was primarily the focus and the direction for us, so that we could narrow into what would be most relevant to patient representatives and collaborators. So I think that was a short presentation. I think that was the foundation for what we wanted to build this this content on. And I'm open to questions if you have any now, or we can take that later in the webinar.
Thank you so much, Lotte, for these interesting insights in the webinar. And I will encourage the audience, if they have any questions to Lotte, please type them in the Q&A box, and she will be able to respond to your questions. Now, it is a great pleasure to introduce the next speaker of the webinar, Dr. Yves Biom. He graduated as engineer in biochemistry in 1989 and PhD in biochemistry in 1993 from Lyon, France, with an MBA in 2006. During his more than 20 years of experience in the medical devices industry, Yves has contributed to the development of medical devices with cumulated sales of several billion euros and to the management of external collaborations, including national and European funded projects. He is also a member of Research and Innovation of Medtech Europe. He is currently Chief Scientist at Medtronic Surgical Innovations, with activities including digital transformation and biomaterial-based devices addressing a large range of clinical indications. Yves, welcome. Please turn on your camera and the floor is yours.
So normally you should see me. Thank you for this nice introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. And I will start to show my slides and to speak in my own name as an employee of Medtronic, and that would not be the official voice of Medtronic. Next slide. And so yeah, patient engagement is really critical for us. And as forward, before giving you a short introduction of the company and where we are, effectively and actively patient engaged. So education is very fundamental, and it was a great pleasure for me to contribute to the educational content of EUPATI on medical devices. Next slide. Just to say, so yeah, Medtronic, it is a quite large company, and just is a big number. 72 million of patients have received Medtronic therapies, products, and all services. So imagine 2 people every second. Just to say that patient is one of our crucial mission and deserved by more than 90,000 people. And more importantly as well, more than 10,000 scientists and engineers to develop this new product and solution. And patient is also very well considered, because any of our products are supported by a large set of clinical evidence, and with more than 2,000 clinical trials which have supported our products. Next slide. Just to say, so I don't want to comment too much on this, but for me, and it is not me telling this, it is official communication. And when you read our mission as Medtronic employees, and all employees, is to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. And just to say one more, that patients are key for us. Next slide. Our main commitment, and you will see that some pillars, it goes well so with or can equal well with patient engagement. So better outcomes, life-changing technology to increase, to improve clinical outcomes, and with more and more minimally invasive surgeries. Also to focus and to place people at the first place, and also to drive the future of our devices, of Medtech products, with data coming from the patient. Next slide. And people, once again, at the center. For whatever we should do, that me speaking, we make technology that transform, once again, 2 lives per second. That's just the start, but we need you. We need patients. We need patient experts. We need patients making the liaison between the scientists, the engineers, the clinical affairs people, and all the supporting function of our new product development with you, patient. Next slide. In patient engagement, so what does it mean? So patient engagement, patient centricity, patient experience, patient management. But for me, what it is the most important among these 4 pillars is patient engagement. And I can read it. Patient engagement is a 2-way interaction between an organization, in this case between Medtronic and patient, and to get the patient perspective. So at the end, what it is needed, what it can be adopted, what can be accepted, to be part also of the co-creation of products and services, and also to be part of decision, and also to take any experience, any feedback, any on the solution and the therapies you have experienced. Next slide. And why patient engagement? It's just an example of a clinical trial, not for Medtech, because we don't have any sufficient feedback yet, but 20% of chances higher to have a drug developed with patient. And also, if we compare all the trials without the patient engagement, it is much shorter, 4 months instead of 6, 11 months. Just to say that for the design of clinical trial and involving patient and patient at the center of the clinical trial is really crucial to engage a patient. And my motto is we can even more engage patients if we can rely on patient experts. And I think, at least minimal base of language, of common language with the industries to be part of this clinical trial design. Next slide. And for medical devices, it is even coming. And it is coming because already in 2099, a draft was edited, was released by the FDA and promoting patient engagement in the design and conduct of medical device clinical investigation. That means what prevailed for drug development will prevail as well for Medtech. And we should be ready for that, not only us as Medtech companies or representative of Medtech companies. Remember, I'm speaking in my own name and not I am not the official voice of Medtronic, and patient. So patients should be more and more considered. Next slide. In patient engagement, what does it mean for us? Once again, our mission is to alleviate pain, restore health, extend life, improve clinical outcomes, to have more and more minimally invasive surgeries compared to open surgeries. That means less invasive surgeries with less, foreseen complication, and delivering quality of life, better quality of life, better return to normal activities. And for this, my proposal is to integrate the voice of the patient and those around them. That means their relatives, for example, or any people close to them, from R&D to clinical trials and also to post-market approval activities. That means during the whole life cycle of medical devices and our solution, from the beginning, from their design phase to the end of the commercial use, because we have always to learn from you. Yes, should be my last slide. Next slide, just to check. Yes. So thank you again, and raise any question you may have about the Medtech industry perspective of patient engagement, and I will be more than happy to answer a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yves, for this valuable information and for sharing your experience in the Medtech sector. Also, a kind reminder to all participants that you can type your questions in the Q&A box. Now we would like to introduce you the third speaker today, Dr. Paula Ray. She studied pharmacology and neuroscience, and in 2010, Paula worked within the community and voluntary sector to ensure research was accessible and relevant to the population. Over the last 12 years, she has developed extensive knowledge of patient engagement and public involvement through her different roles as Public Involvement Program Manager within the National Institute for Health and Care Research East Midlands, Research Design Service, and as a Senior Public Involvement Manager at Involve, providing strategic oversight and direction for public involvement. Her key areas of interest are around increasing health equity, improving public involvement practice, and capturing the many facets of impact. As Senior Manager for the National Institute for Health and Care Research Applied Research Collaboration, Oxford and Thames Valley Program and its teams, Paula provides program management and manages the core team. Her role is to ensure that it works in partnership, researching areas that address the health and care needs of the local population with potential to influence national practice and improve outcomes for all. Paula, welcome. Please turn on your camera and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jana, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this group. Next slide, please. So yes, I'm going to sort of bring in the more academic side and why it was important to be a part of the process of developing the module, and why, you know, what we do in this area. Increasingly, we work in very applied health research. We're seeing more and more devices, medical technology and diagnostics coming through, and we need to make sure that the research is involving patients and that the patients are equipped to be a part of that process. Next slide, please, Jana. So as we've already heard, the whole process has been part of an amazing consortia, the different perspectives that came together that really shaped, we all, I think, learned an awful lot through the process. And one of our contributions was in the United Kingdom, we have National Institute of Health and Care Research funded Medtech and in vitro collaborations. One that we've worked very closely with on the development of this module was Devices for Dignity. And that sort of links through to their website and all their resources. And they've done an awful lot of work in this sphere already, equipping researchers, helping them understand how patients can be engaged throughout the process and why it was so important. And building on the work that Lotte described, that she and the engagement fellows looked at what was already known and where the gaps were. We hosted a multi-stakeholder workshop to bring together the topics and to group them into hopefully logical sense, so that formed the basis and the framework for the module. And Jan has already mentioned these, but these are the 4 areas. And we've been through many iterations of review, refinement, and now publication, and that's the link to the site, which I know Maria has already put in the chat. So next slide, please. So why did we need this? As I say, there was an awful lot of need for clarity, and again, Lotte explained the difference. They had to make a difference between medicines development and device development, and it is different, and we were further along in the more applied field, it's different again. So what was really interesting is we needed to understand how patients could actively be involved and engaged, and what those roles would look like, and therefore what we would need in the module to help equip people to be true partners in the development of a device. And as I say, we worked on what the patient engagement fellows had already discussed, the workshop outputs, and the work that Devices for Dignity had done. And a lot of their work was aimed at the researchers rather than equipping the public. So this collaboration worked incredibly well. And the image there is their roadmap that we sort of used as a basis. And they pull out the 6 different stages of device development. But what we need to know in device development, more so than in medicines development, is it's much more cyclical process, more iterative through the different steps. And I just wanted to share with you an example, next slide please, of where this 4-way partnership between industry, clinicians, patients, and the academic researchers really had made an amazing impact. So this is from 10 years ago, so it's not new, this has been going on. And this is for people that suffer with esophageal reflux disease, which can lead to a predisposition to developing cancer of the esophagus if it's not treated. So the clinicians weren't happy with the choices they could offer their patients. The patients weren't happy with the outcomes. And in the meantime, this was all happening in the UK. And meantime, an industry partner in the United States developed an electronic sphincter device and felt that it would be good as a treatment. Bringing all these groups together, the company were able to, all done over the internet. It was ahead of its time, I think. We're benefiting now. Brought everyone together to understand what the problem was from a patient perspective, clinician perspective, but also for the research to be able to document and actually really capture this. The output from all of this was that this device needed a battery pack, which was also surgically implanted. And the question from the patients was, how long does the battery last? And I'm like, what do you mean, how long does the battery last? Well, surely that's more surgery. I'm like, oh yeah. So they said it only lasted 6 weeks. And this, well, that's not acceptable. And so they looked at different. Longer battery life was too long, too big a pack to put in a human body. So they came up with wireless, and that was a patient's suggestion. The output of all of this was that we had a trial that was really well designed in partnership. And one of the first sites to be recruiting was the team in Leicester, where where Fort was based, the patient group. So that was a really lovely sort of everyone coming together. But the company benefited not only from the fact that they didn't waste time developing something, producing a prototype, putting it to trial to find out this very fundamental flaw, but they also really understood the importance of it. And another very brief example is we talk about all the different stages where patients can get involved and understand how they can shape the device development. But sometimes the impacts, the differences they make aren't intended, but are really beneficial. So where a device had been developed to help patients understand and come to terms with what this device was that was inside their body, they took them to the company and helped them understand how it had been produced. Which, yeah, they loved that. That was brilliant. But what the company also discovered was that they noticed a really high, an increase in their quality of their output, their products, through their quality control, because even people on the production line, and you've mentioned it, it's all employees, the people making the devices, to see the patients that device is keeping alive, giving a quality of life to, is an incredible motivator. Next slide, please, Gianna. So next steps are to continue to review the module and its contents and to add in more examples. We wanted to make it as accessible as possible in terms of putting it into practice rather than the theory. So we've put lots of different examples in, but as this field is developing and expanding and the more we're hearing about, we can put many more examples in to inspire people to have their voice in the development. Redefining that roadmap that Devices for Dignity had done, it also became very apparent that we needed to pull that all together, all the information, and develop a roadmap, which Dominic is going to talk about in a minute. And for me, in the United Kingdom, EUPATI is still not very well known. So I want to do an awful lot more to promote EUPATI and the open classroom, all these modules, and look forward to future collaborative opportunities with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for this interesting insights. And indeed, we are looking forward to enhance cooperation. So now we would like to introduce the next speaker for today, Dominic Hamelink. She's a patient expert and EUPATI fellow. Dominic has a master's in philosophy, specialized in ethics, and a master's in business administration. She is working as a patient expert, especially in the field of severe asthma. Dominic has been successful in getting the patient voice heard and included in development in care and medicine and device development. And now she's going to introduce the wonderful patient involvement roadmap in medical devices. Dominic, welcome. Please turn on your camera and the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Jana. Can we go to the next slide, please? I will now introduce the new patient roadmap for the medical device R&D roadmap. It is the second EUPATI roadmap in addition to the patient engagement in medicine R&D roadmap. Like the medicine R&D, this roadmap gives an overview of what patients can add in the different phases of the development of medical and in vitro devices. Next slide, please. To start with, this is a concept roadmap. The reason for this is that in the coming years, with the implementation of the medical device regulation, more insight in the impact of the regulation will become clear and where and how patients can be engaged. 2 clicks, please. The same as in the medicine development roadmap, we make a difference in the level of patient experience with the disease that is needed for the different roles. It is important to involve patients that have experience with the disease. This is essential as they know the daily impact of the disease and know what is needed from devices to help improve the lives of patients. Next slide, please. From the very beginning, patients need to be involved. What are unmet needs? Where are gaps in what is currently available? What are ideas patients have on what can support them in daily life? Experience with existing devices? What are patient preferences and relevant outcome measures? Is there already data available that is owned by patients? What are the requirements for the device to fit into the options for the healthcare system and patients' daily life? New knowledge and insight is needed to be able to ask the right questions. In the coming year, more and more knowledge and experience will be developed. Human factor considerations should be a must in device development. Next slide, please. The development of devices is different from medicine development. As we had already heard, the technical development is an iterative process. New options, combinations of material and drugs are being developed and can impact usability as well as safety. By being involved, patients can add their ideas and needs for the later use of the device. Where can problems be avoided, improved to make patients' life easier? What are the effects of using a device that could be avoided by changes in the design, like pain or bruising, or not being able to use the device because it requires strength or dexterity the patients no longer have? An important aspect that patients need to ask about is safety of the material used. Think about breakage, interaction between materials and medication. As patients, you do not need to know the answer, but you need to ask the questions. What are the use-related hazards? User testing during development should be a requirement. The protocol design for testing the device, the information for the patient enrolled, decisions on the patient-relevant outcomes, ethical considerations, benefit, risks, non-health outcome, etc., are part of this phase. Next slide, please. The route of the device depends on the type of device it is. Some will need both clinical evaluation and a conformity assessment. If the device needs to go through the process of clinical evaluation, patient engagement is needed to set up the clinical trials, to make sure that the patient-relevant outcomes are measured in a scientifically robust way, and to make sure that the risk and benefits that are important for the patients are included in the clinical assessment. So far, patients are not involved in the CE marking process. There is some talk that the organizations that do this certification of the device will involve patients in the technical evaluation of the device, but this is still unclear. Sometimes devices that seem to do what they are supposed to do, like delivering the right dose of medication to the patient, can be unsafe for patients in daily use, like medication dispensers that do not indicate how much medication is still left, so the patient has no way of knowing if the dispenser is empty. Next slide, please. Based on the clinical evaluation report and/or the conformity assessment, a regulatory assessment will be done. Depending on the device, different organizations can be involved in this assessment. In this assessment, like in medicine development, patients should be involved to add the patient assessment and the perspective. Next slide, please. In the post-marketing dissemination and communication, patient involvement is especially important in what is in the patient leaflet about the device. How is the device designed? Is the leaflet designed? Is the information reliable? Use of language, lay language, and the user instruction should be clear. Devices that are not directly used by patients quite often also need a patient information leaflet. Next slide, please. As we heard before, keeping patients involved in the periodic safety report is needed because through experience with the devices, the insight and benefit risks, unexpected events, and patient experience over time needs to be included in the evaluation of the device and as information for new developments and changes in the requirements for new devices. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to all the new developments and hearing from all of you on questions and other things. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much, Dominic, for introducing the roadmap and for sharing about the process and how it should be implemented. Now it is time to introduce the last speaker today, Eu Hca. She is the EUPATI Open Classroom Coordinator, and Eu is going to present a live tour to the Open Classroom and how you could access the medical devices module. Now I'm stop sharing. Welcome, Eu, and you can start sharing your screen.
Okay, hello everyone. So my goal here is to be short and actually just inspire you all to go on Open Classroom and discover the site for yourselves. So if you see my screen now, then you will see that we are on Open Classroom, EUPATI Open Classroom, which hosts all of the learning courses that EUPATI currently has. And if we move this a bit down. If we hop over to the site, so first of all, if you Google EUPATI Open Classroom, or you just stick in your browser learning.eupati.eu, it will bring you to the Open Classroom. And I'll just give you a quick tour how to navigate the site, and then we'll zoom into the medical devices module, which is the product of all this effort that the presenters talked about today, I would really encourage you everyone to go online and actually see the results of all this work. So let's put this a bit down. So here, if you have about page, then, and we have learning catalog and patient expert training program, the flagship program of EUPATI, FAQ, glossary, and EUPATI toolbox. So clicking on each of these tabs above will lead you to a different place. So this is the about page, and it answers questions of how EUPATI came to be and what is it. If you go to the patient expert training program, or the fellow program in short, then you can read about the program, and the next cohort registrations are open. So discover that. You can go to the FAQ, frequently asked questions, and get to know answers to simple questions of how to get on board, what we can do. Glossary, alphabetical, type search, anything you do not understand about medicines research and development, you can probably find answer there. And EUPATI toolbox referral, which is like this amazing library of resources that you can use if you just click on the toolbox. But one of the most important parts is the learning catalog. So if you open Learning Catalog, you'll see all the modules that EUPATI has developed so far. And scrolling down, we see the medical devices. We see there are 4 courses. If you click on this, it will lead you directly to the content of medical devices. And we have 4 courses here. You see 3 sort of cards, and clicking on each of them will lead you to the course. We have estimated around the time that it takes. You can disregard that. You see the €8 fee. I'll explain a bit later, but the principle of Open Classroom is that it is access to the learning content is free. That's the basic principle. So if we click on the course, this is what we get. So we have the second course now, medical device development, lifecycle management, new technologies and patient involvement. We have course outcomes here on top. So you would, before you start learning, you can always see, okay, what will this be covering? We have put even a little guidance. If you're new to online learning, how can you do the best, make the best out of your time? And each lesson is broken down into either book or page, and clicking on these tiles here, it will lead you to the content itself. So, and for example, the roadmap that Dominic showed you, if we click here, it would lead us to this. So this is a piece of content, and we see it ends up with explanation of patient engagement roadmap. So, and you can click here or you can click back. This is how you navigate the course in Open Classroom. To explain about how to register, or to register to sign up, even if you're as a guest, you can access these courses for free. If you wish to receive a certificate, then we advise you to enroll in the course. If you pass the assessment, which is 10 questions, multiple choice, if you pass with a grade of 7, we will send you automatically a certificate. If you decide to register to the site, which we sincerely advise, because there is no commitment further than that you just have more access to features such as dashboard. Here on the left side, for example, if you would be a registered user, you can make use of your personal dashboard on the site, which means that you can see which courses you're starting to take, your learning progress. Let's say this is my test site, so I've 0 completion rate on certain things. I've completed things, and I've started, for example, medical devices. I can start this course, and then I could click here and say, oh, I want to see only start, and I see that I've done 2 courses in medical devices. You can also bookmark activities, so depending on your content that you are particularly interested, you can bookmark things, so you can always easily find your access back on the learning materials on site and across the entire learning platform. So the dashboard, learning to navigate the dashboard, actually it makes your tracking your learning much easier, and knowing where you want to jump right back. So just go on Open Classroom and start your learning journey. And if you have any questions, we are always there to help you with your technical skills, or just get a bit more confidence and learning how to use the site. So I'm going to stop sharing. We'll start our panel discussion.
Thank you, Eva, very much for introducing the open classroom. And we encourage you all, if you are still not familiar with it, please go and explore, and hopefully you'll find useful information for everything that you're interested in. So now it's actually time to hear from you, the audience. In this section, we have a chance to discuss together with all the speakers what we have heard so far. So I would like to kindly welcome all our speakers back. Please turn on your camera. And if you in the audience have any questions for our panelists, please put it in the Q&A box and we are going to provide you with an answer. And I can see that we already have a question in the Q&A box, and it is to Dr. Biom. Firstly, they thank for the presentation, and the question is, does Medtronic prefer to work with patients directly or prefer patient organizations?
So it's hard to say, but I would say patient organization, because more visible and regrouping and speaking not at the individual level, but as a patient organization. So your voice should be more heard. And you can contact as a patient organization. That would be easier because your impact should be higher. You can contact any Medtronic employees you know, for example, myself or any other. You can contact also the Medtronic with the contact us in the different countries where we are, and the information will be relayed. And if you contact me, so that would be my pleasure to relay the information to any inside the company, within the company, who can then contact you again.
Thank you, Yves. I hope this responds the question. I can see that we have one more question. The first one is, how did EUPATI cooperate with the patient expert? Were they members of production team, or were they advised with patient board? I would like to know the way of collaboration you choose. And the second one is, how EUPATI select patient expert to join the team to build this medical device module. Maybe Dominic, you could respond to the first question here in the Q&A box.
Well, I saw the question, so I saw quite a lot of things are happening. As some of you might know, at the beginning of this year, the new EU HCA regulation became into place. So it's now starting to develop. Within that HCA regulation, there is a requirement that patients will be involved in both the supranational and the national HCA processes. EMA already has the habit of involving patients, and that will only become more. What's also happening, and we saw that in Yves' presentation, that across the ocean in the US, the FDA is severely promoting involving patients as much as possible in the development of medical devices and the evaluation of medical devices. And as the EU and EMA have quite, they're talking more and more together. So I think we will see more and more international cooperation, also in the promoting of patient engagement. EMA is very good at engagement patients. The FDA has a requirement of engaging patients. And now in Europe, we're moving towards engaging patients while not required. It is absolutely advised. And in medical devices, it is really, really necessary. And companies agree with this. I think that's the best answer.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you. And just to add to the EUPATI input, that EUPATI has this wide network of EUPATI fellows who are experts in different aspects and different areas of research and development. So we rely very much also on the background and on the expertise of our fellows. And we're very happy that we have this strong collaboration with them. So I hope this answers the question. And while people are still typing their questions in the Q&A box, we actually have a question to Paula. Paula, based on your presentation, how different stakeholders could enhance the cooperation between patients, researchers, and the medtech industry?
Thank you, Jana. It's showing the different perspectives and the different barriers that people have. We tend to make assumptions because we all get sort of bogged down in our own pieces of work or our own timelines. And actually, by bringing everybody together, you start to understand the commonalities as well as the differences. It's just always enlightening. And I think you said in his presentation about the recruitment's better because patients have told them how they would want to be recruited, what's going to be appropriate to be recruited to, and the trial design will be much more appropriate. But likewise, the patients can also say, actually, this is really important to us and we want to take part in this. And then they then also advocate for it when it does come to market because they're already invested in it. They can see that they've had patient voice throughout and they want it to be developed and ongoing. And I was just wondering if I could just answer the other question as well. So while we had the EUPATI fellows who were amazing and we had different fellows at different stages in this process, we did get a huge variety of voices. Things like the workshops were opened up. So the organisations that all came and all were part of it brought our own public contributors and everything. So we've made sure that throughout this process, we've had a good variety of individuals.
Thank you very much, Paula. And indeed, it worked well in the creation of the medical devices module. I can see that for now there is no more questions in the Q&A box, but we have some questions for you. So we would like to encourage the participants, if they have any questions in mind to the panelists, to please put them in the Q&A box. And we would like to ask if, based on your presentation and in your expertise, what are the main challenges for patient engagement in the medtech sector?
So still speaking, thank you for this question, which is a very critical one and not easy to answer, but I will answer in my own name. So patient engagement, as you know, is just starting, it's just emerging in the medtech sector. But now, so just to say, so we have now people dedicated to patient engagement, and now it starts to be more and more, I would say, considered, and particularly for the patient with diabetes research, the patient with heart insufficiency, heart disease research, because then, yeah, it's really important to engage them. I would say so. We are just, that's my perception, only my perception. So we are just at the beginning, but trust me. So we should do more. Just an example. So we were able, we have developed a patient engagement solution. This digital solution to facilitate the preparation of the patient, and then to also facilitate exchanges after the surgery with the patient, not with Medtronic, but with the HCP, with the healthcare providers and the patient. And I insisted to have the feedback of patient, and then to have the patient voice heard, and to hear back from the navigation how it was through the application, how far it was easy to navigate, how far it was possible to get the right information, to follow the different steps proposed by the app. And for me, that was very important. Just starting, and for clinical trials, as said by Dominic, so it starts from in Europe to be more and more included. But where you have patient at the center of clinical trials, and when you consider some visits at the hospital, follow-up visit at the hospital, when you have some blood collection or any biopsies, tissue collection, or post-operative imaging examination. So this is, for me, that is my voice, but I want to promote that more and more mandatory to have patient experts, because then, according to the pace of this follow-up visits, according to the time also this follow-up visit according to the disease condition of the patient. You should include them first from a logistic, I would say, perspective, but also in addition to the classical protocols, clinical trial protocols, if you can get, the patient, or the PREM, so the patient-related experience, it is good, and also to promote, the collection of patient-related outcomes, so the prompts. So for me, the patient preferences, that's for me crucial. And just to hand, I don't want to take too much time on it, but also the clinical needs. Clinical needs can come, of course, or should come, of course, from the medical team. But for some product or some therapies, it is also very important to consider the patient clinical needs, what they want at the end. And at the end, it is for them, and it is for their clinical outcomes, it's for their quality of life. And if we want the therapy to be well accepted, adopted, patients should be placed at the first place as well. So clinical outcomes should not be the voice of customers only. So customers from a medical, from a Medtech perspective, so it is essentially and still essentially medical doctors. I'm speaking in my own name, I know the name of Medtronic, but we should also run VOCs of the customer, so VOP, so if we can say that, the voice of patients.
Thank you very much, Yves, for this detailed answer. And I have a question actually to my colleague, Eva. Is there anything else that probably you would like to share related to a subscription to the Open Classroom and medical devices module?
So if I think it's sometimes confusing maybe when people see the Open Classroom and they see the little €8 fee sign. Just to repeat again and again, the content in Open Classroom is freely accessible for all learners. We do not charge you to get more knowledgeable about the topics. Where the €8 fee comes in, if you want to pass the assessment and get the certificate for the course. So there's €8 fee, is just this administrative fee, and you will hit it only if you click on the assessment. I want to do the assessment and I want to get the certificate, and only then we will ask you the €8 fee, which you oftentimes can actually ask for reimbursement for your patient organization. So, or if you would like to look for another financial support avenues, EUPATI can advise now and then. So please do not focus on the €8, focus on the amazing material that's out there, and then get to know it. And then once you feel that you are up for assessments, then we hope that we can find or we can help you find solution for that contribution financially that you are asked to make.
Thank you very much for this clarification, Eva. And I have one question to Dominic, just to finish with the patient expert here. How the involvement of the creation of the medical devices module changed your perception about patient engagement?
Oh, wow. I think what it made clear, it doesn't change my perspective on patient engagement, because I feel we need to be everywhere, but what it made very, very clear is that with practice, we as patient experts will learn more and more about how best to engage in medical device development. It was the same when we started getting involved in medicine development. You sort of, the course, the medicine development course and the medical device development course is the starting point, because then you have an idea of what's happening. You have all the background information, so you understand what people are talking about. But then in practice, together with the medical device and combination device development and in vitro and AI and everything else, we will need to work together with everybody to develop how we can best do this. And I'm very excited about what will happen in the future, because I think it will be in the one hand challenging, but on the other hand, it is really, really necessary.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you to all wonderful speakers today. This is actually a good message to wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution, not only for today's webinar, but also for the development of the medical devices module. And thank you, the audience, for joining us and being so active. We hope you have enjoyed this webinar and have learned some interesting things about patient engagement in medical devices. And we would like to remind you that we are going to upload the recording from the webinar in the next few days in the EUPATI YouTube channel. And please check the EUPATI website and social media channels for any additional information about upcoming events. And also please explore the new EUPATI medical devices module. With all that being said, I would like to thank you once again for your participation and wish you a great rest of the day. Thank you. Goodbye.